Good evening. I'd like to call this regular Jamestown Public School Board meeting to order. It is February 19th, 2024 at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room in the middle school. Please note that board member Melissa Gleason will be joining us by phone tonight. And we'd like to recognize all those in the audience. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dan, would you be willing to read the school board norms?
The board-developed norms are to share and respect opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, execute all duties of the school board in compliance with North Dakota Century Code, properly prepare for meetings, and commit to assessing board effectiveness and ensure high-quality governance for all stakeholders.
Thank you, Dan. We have nothing under communication. Does the board wish to declare any conflicts of interest? Any conflicts of interest? Any conflicts of interest? Moving on under consent agenda, would the board like to remove anything from the consent agenda or clarification? If not, is there a motion? Motion by Steve. Is there a second? A second by Jamie. We have a motion, a second for approval of the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under a regular meeting, we don't have any recognition tonight or correspondence. Under reports, Student Council report. Colin Conway, please come up.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of our executive presidents. So I'll just fill you guys in on some past agenda that the Student Council partook in. We had the eighth grade orientation day at the high school. It went, for the most part, well. However, there were some negative remarks made for several of our Student Council members who said some negative things about some teachers. That has been taken care of, and we are going to look into how to better proceed with the 8th grade orientations next year, as it could have been better this year. Another thing that we did in the month of January is we did a free will donation drive for Ethan Eigel and his family. If any of you know, Ethan Eigel was recently diagnosed with a type of cancer. We posed it as Socks for Ethan, as he was known for his crazy socks, and the event raised close to $800, so it was very successful. We had Snow Week about 2 weeks ago. It was an excess, a lot of student involvement. And then we had the snowball to cap that off on Saturday, which was held at the bunker. Again, another success. And then some agenda that we have moving forward. The junior prom committee has everything lined up regarding prom. That will be held March 16th, which is a Saturday. I cannot confirm locations, as we have not heard much from the junior prom committee, but I can just say that it's on the 16th, and they claim everything is going well. So the senior student council members have began to meet to plan the post-grad party following graduation. As we move closer to graduation, we will also begin talks on the nominations for commencement speakers and for people who will be leading prayer. Again, that will be as we move closer to graduation. And then this doesn't really relate with student council, but it's just what's been going on within the school. The Jay's Nest, which is our student store, that is being opened up to more clubs and groups to for them to be able to sell products within the school during lunch hours. So I figured that was important for you guys to know, because it has not been opened for quite a while. So thank you for letting me fill in on behalf of the president. So,
Any questions? Diane?
Thanks for the great report, and I wanted to ask about the Jay's Nest for the public's sake. Can the public come in through the door and go to the Jay's Nest during lunch break and buy things? Or, okay.
I could not give a definitive answer on that. However, I would assume so. Assume that no, because that store is open during public events like basketball games, volleyball games. So those are opportunities for people to come in. It is more of a student store that is open during both lunch hours. I know that Aspen Humes, who is the vice president of DECA, she will be the one spearheading this store when it is actually up and running. It is kind of a tentative situation right now, but of when it is open and what is being sold. But for the most part, it'll be run by DECA. So I should have clarified. I apologize for that.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Colin. That was, you guys have been very busy with that long list of items that you've been working on, and we appreciate you taking the time tonight to come share that with us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Moving on in our agenda, number 2, historical cost to publish school board minutes. Dr. Leck and Christy, you want to kind of explain that information for us tonight?
Sure. One of the questions we often get when the election timeline rolls around relates to we have the election process that we vote upon during the election, but there's always another question related to shall the district publish minutes? And we often get questions about that, but they only come after the event. And we thought in conversations it would be better to have some of that dialogue prior to the election to get that information available to the board and then to others that may be interested as well.
Christy, you want to go ahead and explain the costs?
Yeah. So like Dr. Leck said, every 2 years we have to put it on the ballot, whether the public wants us to publish the board minutes. So we just put together a little, I don't know, is it up there? No. Okay. There is a little graph in the board packet, and over the last few years, the annual cost has gone from $14,273 up to last year it was $17,934, and the costs continue to increase, and we're anticipating around $19,650 this fiscal year for publishing the minutes in the paper. So on the ballot, a yes vote will mean yes, continue to publish the minutes in the Jamestown Sun, which is our official paper, and no vote will mean only post on the website. So we do always post the minutes on the JPS website as well. So if you have any other questions.
And those are annual?
That's the annual cost.
Annual cost, okay, okay.
Yep.
Any questions from the board regarding this, or just? Okay. I appreciate the information, because sometimes after elections too, I'll get that question from the public, like, what does that mean? What does a yes, no mean? What does a no vote mean for that particular question? Dr. Leck?
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things, I'm glad that Christy added the yes and no definition, or shared the yes, no definition. And I think sometimes the assumption is yes vote means we want to see the minutes published somewhere, and a no vote means they won't be published anywhere. And we publish, as Christy said, our minutes on our website regardless. They're on our website. So the yes is we want to continue to publish them in the paper. A no vote means we wish to only see them on the website.
Thank you. Diane?
Well, I assume there's no cost to putting them on the website. And then the second thing is, do any of the board members have any sense from the public on whether they're being read or whether they're, I think you're right, the vote is probably just yes, get them published. But I've never had a sense in all these years that there is a large contingent that's actually reading them and wants them to stay in the paper. So I'm a little undecided.
We get questions regularly regarding items that are in our minutes, whether they read those in the paper, whether they read them on the website. I guess I couldn't speak. I've never asked that question. But we definitely have a very engaged public that, that does read our minutes or watches our meetings or whatever the case is. But again, I don't have a sense of where their preference is to read. I think it's probably just where they become used to reading them
Thank you.
and that they're available to be read.
Thank you, and that was just informational. So, moving on, under Board Education, Dr. Leck, you have something about this in your report, which comes later, so would you want to maybe lead this off right now? And we can have our presenters come forward, please.
Yeah, I wanted to thank our instructional coaches and our administrators. We're having a series now of over the next 3 meetings. We're going to provide board education specific to our assessment results. We talked about this in the summer. We wanted to provide a more, we looked at a district level. We have historically looked at a district level, and that's been very important to us. But we also don't want to, as we say, live in the aggregate and only examine district level data. We have a lot of data, and one of the things that our instructional coaches do so well is to help us analyze that data, help our administrators and our teachers utilize that data. They are, from a data standpoint, some of our very most important staff that help us do our jobs better. And so I thank them for being here and to kind of kick off a really a much more granular look at our assessment data. One thing I will share is because they gave you a lot of information, if you had a chance to look through that, you know, we do need some context to the question or to the charts, and they'll do a great job of that. And I have no doubt that there will be questions. Some of the questions may be very specific, and so if there is a question that's really specific, I'm going to write it down, and we'll provide a response if we can't. We want to give you the best answer that we can. That may not occur just in this snapshot in time. So if we need to give you a little more detailed response, we'll do that at our next meeting. But still, please ask questions, and if there's a question that's a little more complex that we need to get a response to, we'll just deal with it at our next meeting, if that works for everybody. Just want to make sure that you know, we are giving our people enough time to present to you and get a good response. Okay? Again, thank you for being here. I'm actually very excited for this meeting for 2 reasons, and one of them is to kick off these assessment reports. So.
Okay, well, I guess I'll get us started. So
And
thank
just
you.
please introduce yourself for the public's perspective.
I'm Jada Anderson, the principal at Roosevelt Elementary.
I'm Mary Stillwell, instructional coach at Gessner, Washington, and Louis L'Amour this year.
And I'm Rachel Castett, instructional coach at Lincoln and Roosevelt.
Okay, so to start off, thank you, Dr. Leck and School Board, for providing us this opportunity to come in and share with you. We're going to look at how we evaluate our system, and most recently our coaches went through a training, so we'll kind of hit on that towards the end. But the overview of this data kind of goes through benchmark data versus our at-risk data, and then allowing us to review and provide a background on kind of what we highlight as some of the features when we're doing our data analysis. So just to start, keep in mind that when we use our data, there's a lot of ways that we can go about analyzing and processing it. So first is by looking at district school improvement, and that looks at the entire district, but also is broken down by building level. And then we also follow a system, MTSS system, so it provides tiers of support for all of our students, and that is where this placement and decisions come in, and how we can provide supports based on students' needs. For the schools in our district at the elementary level that are Title I, we use this as our evidence and also our decision-making model to move forward on how each school creates their goals, and that's reported to the state, and it also helps with our funding. And then throughout the school year, our instructional coaches do a great job of providing individual data analysis, and they meet 3 times a year, and so they're taking our data, our benchmark data, and they're having these data meetings with the classroom teachers and admin, and they're able to pinpoint the successes that our students are having, but also identifying areas of struggle or need that we can help support them with by additional push-in services, or it might look like a pull-out service where they get additional time for math or reading. Sorry, just one more quick thing. This also allows us the flexibility to adapt in our schedules, and that's one of the things that the coaches really help drive, is being able to look at our schedules and make adjustments based on our needs, and we're not stuck in to say, well, this is how our schedule is created, so we don't have any flexibility or creativity to provide more needs or less needs as our students grow and make progress. And really, all of this data, when we look at it, you'll see it does drive the work that we do at the elementary level, and I would say probably agreed at the high school and the middle school level as well. So it's really the driving force for what we're doing in our classrooms.
So we have two types of data we are sharing with you today. The one is NDSA. That's our state assessment that is given every year to grades 3 through 8 and 10. We will start in March with that assessment at our elementary schools. And then we have our FastBridge assessment. That's an assessment that is given 3 times per year. It's given at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. It is a universal screener that helps us to take a snapshot of how our systems are, and then also to drive instruction in the classroom and help us to find out what kids know and where they might need help in their classrooms.
All right, so where we're going first in this is our district grade level NDSA scores. So what we have up here is just the elementary scores. We're just focusing on elementary tonight. These are grades 3, 4, and 5 that do this test, and the math is on top, and reading, or ELA, is on the bottom. And ELA includes writing as well as reading components. Some things that we note here is that our scores are progressively getting better, grades 3 through 5, so that's a good thing to see in math. And in ELA, grade 3 is our strongest area.
The next data that we provided is our FastBridge through ELA. FastBridge is 2 different types of assessments. Grades K and 1, they give, it's called early reading. Those assessments are given one-on-one for each student, and it is 4 subtests, and then they come up with a composite. The subtests change throughout the year, so it's not always the exact same information, but the subtests grow as the students grow in what they need. So you can see grades K and 1 are our first 2, then grades 2 through 5. The information that we have provided is called A reading, and that's a computer adaptive test where a student is given an assessment and the assessment changes according to the student's skill. So it will get harder if they need it to, and then that helps us to know what students know and then also where they need extra help. So you can see some of the growth. The other thing to note with our FastBridge is it includes all students that have come in throughout the year. So it's not always comparing the same students exactly from fall to winter. If we get a new student or however many in the winter, that's not always the exact same students. And then the next slide is just our grades 3 through 5. So we can see that our ELA can kind of stays about the same from the fall to the winter.
All right, in math, I'm going to kind of explain. Math is very similar to what Mary just explained for the test components. So K1 takes an early math test, which again is made up of multiple smaller components that they do one-on-one with their teachers. And those 2 change throughout the year based on what students are learning in those grade levels. So K1 scores you can see from fall to winter in math, and then 2 through 5, just like the A reading, the A math is an adaptive test where it may get more difficult if students are answering questions correctly or the opposite. So we can see our math data is for here's for 3 through 5 as well, and our math data is looking really good for us for the most part. All of them going up from fall to winter except for 2 grade levels, and those 2 grade levels were pretty close to being maintaining as well.
So something of note with that data is one thing that our instructional coaches do, which they don't talk about themselves enough, is that they do analyze specifically which kids. So when we're going through those data meetings, we also can break it down from grade level to classroom to student. And so it's not just always the big picture, but really getting super narrow and defining which students and how we can support them. So we can also see like if our district from fall to winter maybe is it looks like there's a regression when actually I can speak from at my school, we've had a lot of fluctuation in our 4th grade. So we've had a lot of students coming in and out. And so that's why I would say that the 4th grade data probably leans toward that to say that we've had a lot of fluctuation. And so if we're comparing just our fall and winter students, we would probably see a more consistent data shown, but that's just kind of what I've experienced this year. Okay, so the next piece of data that we have is going to show a breakdown of our student data into subgroups. So the comparison on the top is the fall to the winter data. And one of the things that we want to highlight is that we break the student down into these subgroups so that we can show, one, for monitoring purposes, but also to make sure that we're able to track growth across all of our subgroups and making sure that students are making growth and progress. And if not, then being able to provide those supports as needed. So we will have 4 slides of just showing this breakdown, but then the coaches will highlight maybe some things that we feel like are positive about that.
So the first slide is our early reading, so grades K and 1. As you look at this data, it's different than the other. This one, the red is our most intensive students, the students who need more help. Yellow, still students who are below our goal line, need some help. Green is where we want students to be. So if you look at our KN1 ELA, if you look from fall to winter, you can see that the green bars have grown in most of our groups. So it's nice to see that we are making growth in that area. Oops. And then this is our A reading. Our A reading adds another category. You see the blue line added in this one, and that is our advanced group. So in this slide, we want the green and the blue are both above our mark. And so you can see that there's also growth in most areas with our ELA.
All right, and here's our math data. So here as well, some great growth in this, especially in the moving to benchmark. So that's an exciting thing to see in grades K through 1. I think every single subgroup went up a lot in some. So that was great. And then here's, again, our grades 2 through 5 where that advanced column is added as well. That blue and green are our benchmark levels. So we can see here that we've had some good growth in some of these areas as well, but we also notice that there's areas that we always need to grow and improve, and that's part of why we have these data meetings with teachers and go over this data in depth with them so we can make plans to move forward to better meet the needs of all of our students.
Just one more thing, that data was the same data that we had shown before. It was just that it was broken down into the subgroups.
Yes. So this next section, what we just want to highlight here, these are our North Dakota State Assessment scores by school. So what we've shown you thus far is by district, and we're breaking it down a step further now into by school. So all the scores we had shown you before, they are part of this. That's the same data, it's just breaking it into schools now. Something you might note on this is Roosevelt's NDSA scores. So the top section is ELA, and it compares to the state and district, and then the bottom line is Roosevelt, and then the bottom section is math. One thing you might notice on the bottom lines is that there's those diagonal lines, and that's just to show that there might be a standard deviation between scores. So it gives us approximation of where we fall in comparison to the state and our district. And that's Roosevelt's right there. As you can see, math is an area of strength on our North Dakota State assessments as well. And then this is Gustner's. Lincoln, excuse me. And again, math is showing up consistently in these, as well as ELA in some. And Louis L'Amour. Oh, we have one more. And Washington. Sorry, I forgot that one. All right, so this is by school now, our FastBridge scores again. So what we talked about earlier, the same scores, same fall and winter data, it's just broken up by school now. So this helps us see when Mary and I meet with each other or with all of our team of instructional coaches, we see where we're doing great, where we might need to provide more supports, what we might need to do to provide more supports. This is just giving us an idea of where we're at. It's our reality, and we need to, and this helps us decide how to best meet the needs of our kids. So this is our A math. So again, this focuses on grades 2 through 5 at all of our different buildings. We have Washington, Gustner, and then Lincoln, Louis, and Roosevelt. It's hard to see those up there, so I just wanted to. You can see scores are pretty consistent building to building, which is a good thing. That means that what we're providing is pretty consistent, and it's working consistently for kids. And then we have our early math scores. Okay, so this is grades K through 1 from building to building as well. And some celebrations here. I mean, we have, most of our buildings are in the 70th percentile or higher for benchmark. So that's a great thing to see.
The next scores that we have are our A reading scores for grades 2 through 5. Again, it's fairly consistent through many of the buildings. There, though, our scores are not as high, with 60-some% being our highest percent of kids being where we want them to be right now in ELA. And then this is our early reading, which in many of the schools, this is higher than our A reading.
All right, this is an exciting one for us. So.
This was the most fun we had.
Yes.
This shows adequate progress disseminating our data through ELA. So we were just at a training, Rachel and I, and it was called Evaluating Your System. It was with Wayne Callender, and he shared some great way to really take your data apart. So what this chart does is we looked at all of our students in ELA, and we actually went through them one by one. And we looked, so we have 3 tiers that we look at in Jamestown. We have intensive, we have strategic, and we have benchmark. And we looked at each of those kids to see if they made growth, and then we used the chart that Wayne Callender gave us to see if they made adequate growth. And so the first column, if you look up there, the green means that we're benchmark, we're where we want to be. The yellow is, yep, we did pretty well, we're okay. Red is, we need to evaluate this system and see what's going on. So if you look at our first column, that's the total number of kids that we have. It's broken down into our grades then to K through 5th grade. So we're pretty good, we were pretty good there. Our intensive group was, if you look, it's mostly green and yellow. We did really well there. Then we get into our tier 2 or our strategic kids and our benchmark kids. And you can see a discrepancy, especially in our benchmark. Our K and our 1 this year were able to have a core program that they used pretty consistently across those grades. In 2 through 5, you can see is where we do need some help. So there is a committee that is getting together to take a look at some new resources that this shows that we need for ELA for grades 2 through 5 for sure. That's what was that was what was so fun about this, is just to be like, yep, we do need this. It is very important to our students in Jamestown.
So just to elaborate it on a bit further, if you're still having a hard time understanding. So what we did is this compares fall to winter data, just like we were showing you in FastBridge. And so what it does, like if you go to the benchmark column, it says 67 out of 72 kids. What that means is that out of the 72 kids that were benchmark in kindergarten in the fall, 67 of them stayed benchmark. So adequate progress means that if a strategic kid moves to benchmark, they're making adequate progress. If an intensive kid moves to strategic or benchmark, they're making adequate progress. And if a benchmark student stays benchmark, they're considered making adequate progress. So this helps us figure out at every grade level, and we did this by building as well, but
Yes.
Mary and I combined all of our data to do it at the district level. And so this tells us in each category, if we had movement, how many kids moved, what percentage of students moved. And then this was based on a normative percentage, like she said, that Wayne Calendar gave us, that decided, all right, this grade level is making adequate progress, or this grade level is not in these 3 specific areas. So it was really powerful for us to see, because we knew that an ELA core resource is something that we wanted, that we thought we needed, but this really proved it for us. Like, we need a core resource to better support our students, especially grades 2 through 5. So that was a really exciting thing to see in data, just that what you think is going on really is going on, and that we need to better meet those needs. And we really had conversations about how we thought that better core would help our strategic and intensive kids as well. So, yeah, so that's that.
We were not able to do this with math. They are working on doing the norms for that also, but at this time, it was not available for us.
Oh, and then the one other note on this, and it does say it on the bottom, something that's different than FastBridge is when we collected this data student by student, if there was a student who was here in the fall and not in the winter, or vice versa, they're not included in this data. So it only includes students who had fall and winter scores.
I just want to interject here for just a second. One of the things with evaluating our system, I think that's important to note, is we're going through the process of shifting to standards-based learning. And so one of the things that's really going to support this work is knowing exactly what we're targeting. And the groups and the leads that have been doing a lot of this work are able to help identify those resource needs. So the data is supporting it. Now we're going to be able to take our SBL work a little bit farther and go deeper to make sure that we're finding the appropriate and adequate resource to really get students where we need them to go. So just knowing that it's been a journey and we're moving in the right process, or going through the right process right now.
And then again, we just want to reiterate what we're using this data for. As Jada said before, the things on top, but then we also have future goals on using this. We plan to do this adequate growth every winter and spring. There's a different calculation you use for winter to spring data that we'll be doing building to building and district-wide as well, and we'll continue to do that, and we plan on implementing that for math as soon as we're given the resource to do that. Again, it aligns with SBL and the programs that we want to use to better meet the needs of our students. And then using this data in PLCs and data meetings, that's data is part of the PLC process. So using it and talking, whether it's within your building or when you're meeting as a whole district team, talking about what are you doing that like your data looks great. What are some things you're doing that I can use in my classroom that might help my kiddos? Or do you have programs that you're using, that your school has provided, or that our district has provided, that you're using more than me, that we're seeing that this is an effective use of time? So yeah, that's all.
Yep, thank you. Do you have questions for us?
Any questions from the board? Jamie?
Thanks for all your hard work into this presentation and all that you do. I just wanted to point out that I really appreciate the fact that you pointed out the growth versus adequate growth, because there is such a difference. So I really appreciate that aspect.
Any other questions? Aaron, go ahead. Oh, Dan, too. I'll get you next.
Yeah, data's fun, yeah. Yeah, so I wrote down a bunch of questions here. I don't expect you to answer these. I'll forward these on. and so that we don't bog this down, because, yeah, we can go into far more detail than what we need to. I appreciate the overview. It's very, very good presentation. Thank you. Yeah, so I guess just to make sure that I understand the overall context here. So this is, you said multi-tiered, so you're looking at district, you're looking at school, you're looking at classroom, you're looking at individuals. So that's kind of the tier structure there, is that, or is there?
And it breaks it down just to the tiers within the students too. When we talk in our classrooms, we talk about tiers. We have our tier 1, which is most of our kids. It's what most of our kids get. We have our tier 2, which some kids get a little bit more, and then we have tier 3, where those kids need even more support.
Okay, so you're talking.
Yeah, multi-tiered would be within a class, within a school, within a classroom, within that group.
Okay,
of
so
kids.
it's basically a proficiency of the students itself.
Yes.
Okay. And then was there 3 different assessments? You had the NDSA, you had FAST, and then is there a level of standards based in here, or?
Not in this data.
Not in this data,
not-
yes,
no,
okay.
no.
But there were 3 different
Yeah,
assessments?
FastBridge has 2 different types of assessments. They have one assessment for K and 1, and then another assessment for 2 through 5. So the K and 1 is more one-on-one because of the age of those
Right,
students.
right,
They,
okay.
on a computer, they don't do as well.
Okay. So yeah, I guess just some of the other questions, and again, I'll forward these on. We don't need to answer these right here,
Okay.
but just, these assessments, the level of subjectivity versus objectivity, and how you would characterize that. How does this data correlate to DPI state standards? For the cases where you mentioned a few times on how kids, come into or leave the program, leave the assessment phases there. Is there enough data there for the remaining data to be statistically significant, so you don't have to, you can just remove those data points from the population? What is the significance of ethnicity as an attribute? I just noted some significant digits used in there. How is the standard deviation determined, and is what is shown, is that one standard deviation? And then does the benchmark move for each assessment period? You mentioned that you have the 3 different levels there, and there's different phases. Does that benchmark then move so that the benchmark students are achieving a higher level or a higher standard as they progress?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'll forward those on. Thanks.
And if I may, Aaron, I think what I will do is the questions that get submitted, I'll just include responses in the next available superintendent report. I'll just list some questions and then responses. It may be, depending on how many questions and how much time they need, it might be our next meeting, it might be a future meeting, but we'll get them all responded to. The other thing, I wanted to draw attention to your question about the tiers, and that you may be more familiar with how we wrote it in the strategic plan, which is in growth and learning, core, core plus more, replacement core. So you might be more familiar with those metrics that we called it that in the strategic plan. We said 80% in core, 15% in core plus more, and then 5% replacement. So that's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, just name something different. So we'll try to get a little bit more uniform with that language. Even in education, we kind of vacillate sometimes between what we call stuff. And so when we're talking with people that don't live in that world, sometimes we use those things synonymously and think that everybody knows what we mean. So we'll clear that up too. But that's the tiered piece that I wanted to draw attention to.
Diane?
I thought it was a fabulous presentation, and I guess my favorite part was when your faces lit up to see that your data matched your reality. That is, that doesn't always happen, and it was really reassuring to know that what you're seeing on the ground is also been spotted in the data, so I understand your excitement.
Thank you, Diane. Any other questions from the board? Okay, and I was just going to mention if you think of something later, as Dr. Luck has putting these things together and retrieving additional information for you, just feel free to email him.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, and I just wanted to reaffirm before we let these three go, the hard work that they do every day. And I can tell you, 5-6 years ago, before we had, the same number of instructional staff, instructional coaching staff throughout the district, these aren't reports we could have provided to you. They weren't reports at the level which we could have had capacity to provide. And a lot of it has to do with the work that they've done to support our teachers, to support our administrators, and just the daily data work that needs to go into analyzing this. As you can see, there's a lot here and a lot for us to work on. We don't have capacity without them to do that. So I want to make sure that they are recognized for really an outstanding job in doing what they do, so we can, so our teachers can do their jobs better, so our administrators can do their jobs better. So thank you for what you do.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate all that you do, and I know Mr. Gaylor helps with some of this stuff as well, so we appreciate everyone's work, and this level of extra help in this data area has really made a difference in the time that I've been on the board. We get a lot more information about our students' progress, so we really appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Moving on to the superintendent's report, Dr. Luck.
Sure, you have my written report. I will work through that written report and please at any time feel free to ask questions. Later on in the agenda, you'll be acting on a recommendation for the JV CTC Assistant Director. We did hold those interviews. We had a representative group, as we have had with other administrative positions. What makes this a little bit different is the individual work that we are recommending is currently doing that, serving in that role as the Dean of Students, Heidi Eckert. And so the recommendation, as you'll note in the agenda, is to simply transition her to that position if the board approves that position, to start immediately, because that's really the work that she's doing now. And there would be some expansion of responsibilities because there hasn't been budgeting responsibilities. There hasn't been some reporting responsibilities because her position has been Dean of Students. And so Mr. Gaylor has kept some of those. So if it would be approved to begin on the 20th, tomorrow, then we would start the process of transitioning those responsibilities. And we absolutely believe that she can take those on in the near future. And I'm looking forward to working with her in that capacity. But I wanted to pause if there were any questions related to what I'm asking. This is also consistent with what was done with the other Dean of Students position for similar reasons. So I just wanted to pause this, see if there's any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? It's item 5B, number 1 and A on your agenda for tonight. Do you have any questions?
Okay.
Okay, if not, go ahead.
Okay, moving in the early graduation policy revision recommendations that's specifically related to policy GDB and GDAA, graduation exercises and early graduation respectively. That's being recommended based on changes and needs that were brought to us from the alternative learning staff, so administrators, counselors devoted to alternative education, wanting to make sure that our policy supported, the non-traditional student. The policies as they were written did not, and so we worked together and provided some rationale, some change in policy, and rationale is pretty simply, those are students on a different academic pathway, and so we need to make sure that our policy provides a similar opportunity through policy, recognizing that they are at different places in their educational pathway. So that's where those two policy revisions come from. The other policy recommendations relate to NDSBA policy services recommendations, and so they are simply part of our regular review. Giving Hearts Day, we asked at our last meeting about, or we reported on Giving Hearts Day at our last meeting. We were looking at raising $10,000 in matching funds, and we raised over $15,000. So a thank you to our school community, for the community as a whole, and other individuals giving gifts to support really a huge cause. And so a great deal of thanks on behalf of Dollars for Scholars to our community to support Giving Hearts Day and Dollars for Scholars. Child Care Initiative, I said I was really excited for two things in this meeting. One was for the board to hear that elementary assessment report being much more comprehensive than we've been able to provide in the past. They've done a fantastic job. That last slide that showed the different breakdowns, that was very new. They introduced that to me, when we were starting to talk about this presentation. They wanted to show, this is where we think we're going, and does this kind of align with the vision? And I saw that, and I'm like, that's exactly what we need to see, a very easy to read, understand, and read chart that encapsulates, what we do from a data standpoint. So I was very excited about that. The second is the Child Care Initiative, and that's also later on in the agenda, so I'm not going to try to steal the thunder of that now. But it's Board Memo 102, and that's the culmination of really what's been a lot of work by different individuals, starting with just an idea, moving into a tour, moving into greater exploration, moving into surveys, looking into feasibility studies, grant writing. I mean, a lot of steps have brought us from an initial conversation, which was very brief and kind of general in June, at a June board meeting, all the way to this point where we really do believe that's viable, and that could be a significant benefit to our staff, and we think, and also to our students as part of our curriculum. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about that. But between those two items, those are absolutely the things that get me excited about to share with you. The board self-assessment, we do have policy. It's BEC. And you should have all received that assessment survey already. So if you haven't done that, when I give out surveys, kind of the general belief is people either fill it out on the day they get the survey or the last day of the survey. So whether it's open for 3 months or a week, it usually is about the same amount of. Usually it's pretty heavily weighted, about 80% to first day, last day. So the survey's open through tomorrow. At midnight. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, please spend a little bit of time and take that assessment. What I will do is review it and give you a report. I did fix that. We had some issues with the sliding scale last time. Those should all be addressed. I did go walk through everyone this time. And when SurveyMonkey last year did a update, and somehow those scales got changed for some. So I will do a report and give you a sense of what that data tells you about governance and next steps and how we can become even better. Transportation bidding services, we did get one bidder, Harlow's, for transportation services. Finance Committee will be meeting next Tuesday, and that's one of our agenda topics, is to review that bid. I want to thank the board for allowing me to attend the American Association of School Administrators. That's AASA. If you ever hear me talk about AASA, that's the organization that I mean. It's the national organization for superintendents. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to go. I had really a wonderful experience. When I get to go, and I was able to go not just because you allowed with the professional leave, but I'm the president of the North Dakota chapter over the next 2 years, so I get to represent North Dakota there as well. And so the association does cover my costs. So there isn't a financial impact to the district outside of the time that you give me as on professional leave to attend. I attended a lot of sessions on strategic planning, on retention, and artificial intelligence. Those were pretty much the bulk of the sessions that I attend. Oh, I'm sorry, school safety. I attended a couple different sessions on school safety as well. We heard a wonderful speaker, a terrible story about Sandy Hook, and a mother from Sandy Hook, and got to hear her story. Not just her story, which of course is very interesting and very heart-wrenching, but her perspective as a parent going through the tragedy and how we can learn from that and how we communicate when emergent situations happen, gave me a little additional insight on the things that we need to do in those situations, not just monitoring the situation, but also how we can manage and support the dissemination of information and how important that is to the process from the community perspective. So I really had a lot of takeaway from that as well. And I wanted to recognize the last thing I have on my agenda before I pause for questions is similar to McKinney-Vento, Mrs. Anderson, who was just here, provided a kind of a primer, a couple-minute primer on McKinney-Vento and homeless education. She did the same for foster care and our school district responsibility for students that are in foster care. And I just provided a link to that. It's a training that she provided for staff that'll be shared through administrative meetings and how our building administrators choose to share that. But I wanted to share that with the board as well. I thought you did a great job with that too.
Any questions from the board regarding the superintendent's report for tonight? Okay. If not, oh, yep, Jamie, go ahead.
With the transportation bidding, is that in addition to Dietrich's also bidding, or they have not?
So great question. Dietrich's did not bid. So our only bidder was Harlow's.
Any other questions? If not, moving on our agenda, number F, nothing under old business. G, new business. Number 1, nothing under activities, or 2, buildings and grounds. Number 3, curriculum assessment and instruction. We have A, JVCTC, childcare discussion. Informational, this relates to board memo 102. Dr. Luck, do you want to just summarize that, and we can have some discussion with the board?
Yeah, thank you. So on June 5th, I provided in the superintendent's report that we were discussing the concept of could this work? Could we run a child care center through our career and tech ed programs? And would it be feasible to do that? We just brought it up, for board awareness that this is something we think can work, but we really needed to dig deeper. Taking on a venture like this isn't something you just say, yep, we can do it, and you start. There's an exploration that happens. And to be honest, I thought it would take much longer than what it did. But I want to recognize Mr. Gaylor, who did an awful lot of work, Heidi Eckert, who did an awful lot of work, Teresa Olson at the CTC, who did a tremendous amount of work and research, and absolutely deserves a lot of recognition for the work that's been done. We had a couple other teachers from our Teacher Leadership Academy, Mrs. Shoemaker, Miss Streifel, that also participated in a tour and provided a lot of feedback. And we had some good feedback from our staff in a survey that really helped us narrow down on, is there a need or not? We can assume something, but the survey helped us really dig in to the level to which there would be support and need from our staff. So again, June 5th, we kind of brought this idea, is it possible? And then we've spent, since June, in a couple of different phases looking at feasibility. So we started with a survey. We surveyed first. Well, I'm sorry, we took a tour in October, around the same time, but we took a tour of the program at Lake Region Career and Technical Center that's in Devils Lake. This is a service that they provide. And so a team went up there, including the individuals that I just referenced. We're able to ask a lot of questions. There's a lot of regulation, as we all know, related to child care. And so that's a big question that comes up when schools we aren't the first school to say, hey, maybe we should provide child care. But it becomes very daunting when you look at cost, management of a program like that, and the regulation. And so we wanted to get a sense of somebody who's already doing it well and be able to pick their brains. Krista Brodina, who is the director of the JVC, or the Lake Region Career and Technical Center, was a wealth of information for the team to look at. They gave us great feedback in terms of their budget and their cost, how they go about and manage their program. And of course, we're very different districts, but we have got a real good sense that if things worked out, that this was something that we could model ourselves on. We did provide a survey in October that was designed to gauge interest. Is there, we can assume that there's interest, but is there interest from staff? And we had 69 responded. 15 staff replied that they had 19 children. Again, we have much more than 69 staff, so we're looking at a representative group here. But 15 staff had 19 children in daycare, and they ranged in age from birth to age 5. We asked them the cost of daycare, and that was about $900 annually when you took out those that had no cost. Some were able to make that work without cost, and so we eliminated those because we didn't think that was a fair average. So that's about $900 monthly. But really a big theme, even from those that responded, to say we don't have a need, but there was a prevailing concept of support, that these would be good resources devoted to our staff. Even if I wasn't personally benefiting from said initiative of childcare, we got a lot of responses back that said, not going to benefit me, but I wish we had it when I had kids in that age range, or what a great idea this would be. A lot of really significant support overall. A couple other comments that were pretty prevalent in the narrative responses were, that it would provide, there would be a significant financial impact to staff, the individual staff, likely those that are at the lower end of our pay scales. And so directing those benefits made sense to people that were responding. The support staff and for new teachers in particular were also identified. Our support staff and our new teachers. A positive thing that was referenced on multiple occasions, those that were looking at this as a benefit to them, but also those that just noticed that were just supportive of the benefit in general. For teachers, of course, and support staff, you look at the schedule. There is often a responsibility to pay and hold a slot in childcare. So we're paying for a service that isn't being taken advantage of because people are home in the summers and have less of a need for childcare in the summer. And this program would run on a teacher schedule and on a para schedule. So there would not be a need to hold a spot that, and pay that monthly cost. So outside of just what they could save in the monthly cost, because we couldn't operate at no cost. There would be just a decreased cost monthly, but the summer would represent no cost. People would simply have their spots held. Ability to attract more staff, and just general appreciation that the concept was even being studied was referenced on multiple responses. Some questions came up related to after-school care. Would there be, would this extend to after-school care? How are we, what's the hiring procedures like? There were some questions about that. A lot of interest in the potential for pre-K services. So would a teacher be there that could provide pre-K services? And that was a question that came up significantly. And then just generally inclusivity and accessibility would all have access. So from there, we knew that this was a viable concept, that there was interest. And so we had to look at the spaces that we had. And we looked at the JVCTC as the space. And we analyzed that space and did a little facility assessment. And so we recognized that at the JVCTC, there would really need to be a remodel and a renovation of 5 classrooms, existing classrooms, and then repurposing space at that location. Of course, there needs to be things like controlled entry, that it doesn't exist in the same manner now. There would need to be enclosures that don't exist now. Some of the spaces would have to be remodeled to accommodate different types of students. Our students that are newborns have a different need than students that are in pre-K services. And so, and the JVCTC was built for adult education. So those spaces would need renovation a little bit. There is obviously not a playground, any playground equipment in that space now. And so looking at all of those different things, and we came up with about $715,000, so a significant cost related to that. And I want to give Mr. Gaylor an awful lot of credit because, as Mr. Gaylor often does, he looks first for grant funds, and is there a way to fund this without local dollars? And so we discussed a regional workforce incentive program grant that we were made aware was available. We asked for the maximum that we could, which was $500,000. When I wrote this memo, we had an idea that we were going to get it, but in the interim, we did have a formal notice that we would be a recipient of that grant. So again, exciting news. So out of $715,000, $500,000 would be of that renovation would be devoted from a regional workforce incentive program grant. So one of the important pieces of information to know about this grant is that it does require a 25% match, which actually works out pretty well because we don't cover everything. So, the costs of the $715,000, some of that would have to be a match anyway. What we talked about doing is trying to shift our recent CTE grant. If we are going to, moving forward with that CTE grant, seek approval through the state CTE board to shift our grant application to accommodate a portion of that. So about $170,000, $175,000 devoted to, or about that, from a shifting of another grant. So our existing CTE grant. Now that would mean, of course, we have to prioritize, what we thought we might be able to do in our previous CTE grant, some things we might not be able to do, or we wouldn't be able to do. We would be prioritizing, adding another thing on the list, but that would give us an easy path to getting that match. And so again, it's just about prioritizing. And as Adam and I looked at that, some of those, to me, some of those things are harder to advocate to not have because they are program expansions or they are program enhancements that we believe are necessary. Others we're a little bit lower down our priority list, even though it pains me to say because I really enjoy the idea of having a full simulator for aviation. It's not necessary to run the program. We can run the program as we are. Now, does that mean that we would say, a full motion simulator is absolutely going to be cut if we move forward? No, not necessarily, but it is probably on our lowest of priorities when we look and compare them to others. But we would have to make choices. If we say, yes, we want to move forward, we would have to make choices. Either it's grant or finding some other way to pay that 25% match. So out of that $715,000, really what that leaves us with is $40,000. Between that match, what we feel like we can pull from the $500,000 plus what we pull from our existing CTE grant and reprioritize, that leaves us with about $40,000 that we believe we can do one of two ways. One, the district could just say, in our next budget cycle, we're going to commit $40,000 to this project. Or two, the JVCTC could, over a period of time, pay that back. We would commit that money up front, either through the JVCTC budget or through the district's general fund. And as the program is financially successful, it pays off. And again, this program isn't designed to make money. It's designed to cash flow. But in years when you can be really efficient, have the maximum amount of students from a scale standpoint, you would have a little bit of money that you could repay that difference of $40,000. So I could see it as a $40,000. Yes, that's our commitment as a district, but I could also see it as a break even, that you just give them that money up front to house the program, and then the program pays it back over a period of time. So when I talk about the $715,000, that is simply devoted to getting the building ready for a program. We would anticipate the program starting not this next year, but the following year. We would need a lot of time for renovation. So operational costs, I believe the program, the numbers that we looked at would be scalable. And so what I mean by that is our staffing would depend on the students or the children that we have in the program. But if we were fully scaled, so the maximum capacity could be 8 infants, 15 toddlers, and 20 pre-K students. And if that was the case, which is a significant number, you would have 2 professional staff. One of those is our existing child care or our child development instructor, Teresa Olson, who I referenced earlier, a new person that we would need to hire, and then 3 support staff. That's if we were fully, if we had 8 infants, 15 toddlers, and 20 pre-K, that's what the staffing that would need. And so from a budgetary standpoint, operationally, there would be monthly fees. And that's the staffing we believe we can break even with at that scale. So we do believe from an operational standpoint, we can break even with that number of staff, with that staff increase. So a few things to consider. There is a little bit of variability. The number of staff we need is going to be based on the number of students, so there's variability in that scale. One other thing to consider, and we don't have verification on this yet, but typically in the first year of a program or a new program, the reimbursement rate is higher for that program. So our center reimbursement is 40%. So typically what's allowed is in that first year you get a higher percentage of reimbursement, so 75%. That could target a big chunk of that 40% savings, as well as if we get a higher reimbursement rate in year 1. So some of that could be absorbed just by getting that higher reimbursement rate for the program, because it would require a second FACS program. So if they give us that higher reimbursement rate for the second FACS program, that's another recapturing of dollars there as well. The rationale and recommendation, I don't think I need to talk a lot more about that from the impact of staff, but from an impact of our community, I think we're likely all familiar with the bottleneck of childcare that already exists, people struggling for childcare, the recruitment and retention opportunities that would exist through providing this for our staff, for our certified staff or non-certified staff. And, I didn't talk about our students either. We do have students that have children. We do have GED students that come and receive GED services, and they need to bring their kids because they don't have childcare. For this program, those individuals would be covered at no cost. There wouldn't be a cost if we did have a student with a child. That would be simply absorbed in the cost. If we had a GED student that needed services while they were attending their classes at the CTC, that would be provided at no cost. We would have some capacity for drop-in too, because that happens, and we all know that too. Sometimes we might have child care through somebody else. They get sick. What am I going to do? Should I take a sick day? Oh, here's drop-in services. Maybe I can provide that. So I didn't talk about those, and I think we want to do that. But I think with a lot of work but limited financial impact, we could provide this to our staff. I think we're very close there. I think there's some family savings that would be realized most likely by our neediest of staff. And I think it also provides a pilot for pre-K services that we might be able to take a look at how that works as well. And I think we would learn a lot. Lastly, we talk a lot about how these things align to our strategic plan. As I look at it, the culture of learning, which is strategic focus 1, goal 2, Jamestown Public Schools will annually survey staff to create a building baseline and establish annual improvement goals to retain and recruit high-quality staff. I think that aligns with that goal. I think it also aligns with goal 5 in focus area 4, growth and learning, Jamestown Public Schools will annually analyze existing compensation and benefits and provide no fewer than 3 improvement strategies. I think that aligns there pretty well too. So what would the next steps be? I'm just providing this as information, a lot to process. You know, it would be a big board decision. We do have some conversations that really require a level of board approval. Is this the right decision for the board to make? We have to go to the state CTE board. If we needed to shift what our goals are in the CTE grant, they need time to say, well, this works for us or it doesn't work for us. But at the next board meeting, because I don't like to bring something up, especially a big thing, and then just ask for approval. I think we need time to process. You need time to ask questions. And so my idea would be to bring this up, and then we could determine if there's additional planning that's necessary, and then bring it up at the next board meeting or a subsequent meeting if more decision or direction is needed, so we could take the next steps that we need to take in making a plan. But my recommendation, when I do bring it back, will be for approval. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Aaron.
Just outside of, excuse me, outside of providing the basic childcare services, what is the CTE program elements that are, I mean, the student involvement, and so what does that part of it look like?
Yeah, it would be provided as part of the FACTS program, and Mr. Gaylor is here. I might ask him to come up and share a little bit more about how that process works, but we would be utilizing this as part of our FACTS program. We would have a separate FACTS program that would be focused on child care development, or child development and child care services, and so our students would have that hands-on opportunity, an expanded child care opportunity as part of that program, and I'm sure you can provide a little more context and color. So,
Mr. Gaylor, thank you for your work on this, and
It's
a lot
exciting.
a lot of work, yes. You want to just provide some foundational information regarding that?
So relative to that question, the child development class there's a freshman level class that's kind of introductory. And then we have our early childhood education program that's also a play school. So they actually are planning the lessons, delivering the lessons with students. So developmentally, we see this as the third step then within that, and that's the way that what we saw in Devil's Lake is that after students have the classroom experience and the play school experience, that then they're involved fully in the childcare for credit. So just like we do send some students out on work-based learning experiences to other centers in the community, this would just be an in-house option to continue to develop those skills. We could add that third credit then for students, and then still have students going out into the community as well.
Other questions from the board? Jamie?
Excuse me. This is open to all employees of the district, am I correct? Is there like an application process if we have, 23 toddlers instead of, or is there any fluctuation in those numbers at all?
So the rooms are designed with a maximum capacity, so you wouldn't have the infants in the same room necessarily as pre-K, and so there's a room level capacity. The numbers I think are pretty high to what we would need, and so I think they're on the maximum side. We have not talked enough about the application process, but I think at this size, it would be, the fact that we'd run into those would be fairly unlikely, but we'll talk about an application procedure and how that might work. But I feel pretty strongly that we wouldn't run into those maximums at least not at 8 newborns, 15 toddlers, and 20 in pre-K. Maybe closer to the pre-K, we might run into that. But I think we're in a good shape with numbers.
Diane, and then Steve.
Yes, I know that we'll have lots of discussions and we'll talk about budget a lot, but I have to say that it would take a lot to dissuade me from supporting this. This is a fantastic idea. I noticed in our self-assessment in the board survey that there were several questions having to do with community and how we interface with community. I think that you would find the same thing when you did a survey of the community, that this is a fantastic community service as well. And I'd like to see something in the Jamestown Sun as we get closer to making decisions. I am absolutely an advocate of trying to support parents as they try to work in our workforce. And my husband and I struggled for years with childcare. And it's a service not only to our district, but to our community, because we're going to be freeing up 40 spots. And you're right, there's a bottleneck. And it's not the crisis it was 10 years ago, but it's still there. And I think the community would largely support it and be pretty excited about it. I did have one question. As you were doing the surveys and the discussions, because I was so involved in trying to get childcare for years, when summer comes, many of these staff will pick up second jobs. Was there any concern that, not that they're not going to have a spot held, that's obvious, but how are they going to get their children covered in the summer if they need them covered when childcare is such a problem in this town as it is nationally?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And I don't know if I know the answer to that. How, some might do it. To me, it's just a trade-off. You either have to make that payment, if you are somebody who needs that full-time care, maybe this program isn't the right choice for your family. But those, I think the number is significantly higher for those that would prefer not to have that summer responsibility. So I think people would just have to make the choice. But I don't believe that we could fund it and provide it over the summer. And am I right, Mr. Gaylor, with Devil's Lake, that is a school year program. It is not a full year program.
Yep. Yes, it's a school year program. There are pros and cons with offering that full year. One of the complicating factors is the CTE reimbursement of the instructors that are the main professionals that are running that, and that just doesn't align exactly with what needs are. I think you may be able to find some alternate instructors, but I think it would be complicated. I'd want to ask Krista Brodino how that decision-making process worked with them. The idea is that it's available for our staff and the students going to take their GED and any students that might have children as well.
Diane?
Well, I love this on so many different levels. I could talk about it for a long time, but I will say this. I really appreciated you calling newborns our students, because they will be someday, and it's nice to have that hands-on. Thank you.
Steve is next. I'll come back to you, Jamie.
I guess Diane pretty much asked my question, but I was just wondering about summer programming. I don't know if staff would need it so much, but I have to believe there's a lot of K through 3 students that are requiring daycare that don't require it during the school year. But yeah, I was just curious if there was any thought about keeping it going during the summer.
Yeah, I ultimately think it comes down to, can we manage the program over the summer? It might just have to be something that works at the school year level. That's really all of the discussions we have had, and push us towards that reality. But greater conversations are needed to, if this is approved, it's not something that's going to start tomorrow. So certainly a question that can go on our list of things to work through. But our initial discussions were just a school year program.
Go ahead, Jamie.
With the budget, does this basically just for the renovations, or does this include everything from toys to cribs to baby wipes to down to the supplies?
Yeah, the preliminary amount was what we would need to start a program. So that includes some supplies and things like that. It's not just the renovation. It is, and I can talk about that more when we get to that. But a preliminary budget did include everything needed to start a program, and then the operational costs were what we needed to keep that program running with staffing most particularly.
Aaron?
Yeah, I guess that, I'd like to say that I fully support this, and I think with the budgetary numbers that you have thrown out there, I don't see any roadblocks in the way of making this happen. So I think it's just peeling back the onion, getting to that next level of detail, and how the nuts and bolts of this is going to be pulled off. But I fully support the direction going that way. So.
Any other questions from the board? Dr. Luck?
So I have a question of the board. So I will be bringing forward a recommendation at our next meeting then, based on the discussion we've had to approve the program. I would like some feedback on what information you need to feel comfortable with saying, okay, we are ready as a district to move forward with this idea. What more information do you need from me? And that might not be something you can give me right now. That might need some processing, but I want to make sure that you have all the information you need at, the first March meeting to say, yes, I feel comfortable moving forward.
Aaron?
I got one just off the top of my head here, so I don't forget it. Just as far as what other support staff would be required in the case that one of the teachers is out sick or something else. Who else can step in? I mean, do we have to have additional backup? Is there requirements? Because now we're caring for infants and other needs. So.
Yeah, you would have some regulations associated with that, so we can put some information together there.
I guess my question is, some of the variable costs you discussed, depending on the size and the enrollment, kind of what tipping points regulation requires us to have additional staff? Like where are the tipping points? And, if we need if one more child creates a new staff hire, but then how many more do we need to make that budget neutral?
Okay, so I provided you a maximum. So maybe 2 other levels,
Yes.
like what might,
Yep.
a level of 4 newborns, okay.
Yeah,
So
some
only
other
with
steps
one
in the
support
middle.
staff,
Yep,
it
yes.
would be this level. Okay, we can do that too.
Because you mentioned those are maybe high on.
Yeah, it's
on
a
some-
maximum list.
Yep.
So,
And
yeah.
So just, that's what I would be looking at, just cash flow.
And maybe just in more general terms, is there a link where you can point us to where we can kind of just see what these regulations are? Can I get a context for what we're looking at here?
Yeah, what you're getting into?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can try to provide that too. I know, and again, I'll give a plug to Teresa Olson, who has done just so much work with really digging into those regulations and knows them as well as anybody. So, somebody that just took a real shine to this idea and is doing great work. So yeah, we will get that information also. Hopefully, Amy's writing all of that down because I will surely forget between now and tomorrow. So,
Steve?
I probably read this and we probably talked about it in the last couple minutes, but it's slipping my mind. Are we displacing something in this CTC, or this is new construction?
no, really the only shift would be right now the Innovation Academy, which isn't currently operating because we don't have appropriate staffing. That has been housed in CTE, and so we would have to look at what that program might look like, where that program might take place. You know, is that program better as a push-in? So meaning, is that a program that is better designed to support all kids if we use that resource in the general ed classroom instead of a pull-out in which some students are taken and services provided, or would it be better to support the teacher in providing those types of experiences to all kids? So those are the types of things that would come with shifting Innovation Academy from that location. Or maybe it's, go back to the old model of providing it at various sites and it still remains pull-out. So there's some things to talk about there, but that would be the only program not eliminated necessarily by that, but displaced. Right, Adam? I don't think anything else. We would move aviation to a different part of the building, but other than that, part of that, 2 of those 5 rooms are already devoted to childcare.
We did a preliminary architectural drawings, and so the aviation room would move to the Innovation Academy room, which is actually a larger space. Currently, the student store is also in, and so we have to be able to find space for that, although the space that it's in is pretty generous for the amount of time that it's used currently. And so those two programs would shift. We also like the idea of the aviation space moving to a larger location, because they're in our last 5-year vision visit, one of the suggestions was to enhance our tech and engineering component, and that's something that we have aspirations for. We feel like that could be combined with that aviation space to also support some additional tech and engineering.
Very good. And it even just maybe, you said you kind of have some preliminary, just out of curiosity, it'd be interesting to look at those and even just drop off, pick up those kinds of things as well, just for safety for everyone. So, did you have anything else to add? The board have any other questions? And if you think this is a lot to digest, so if there's something that tomorrow you think of or the next day, just email Dr. Leck. He'll make sure to include all that in his information that he'll provide us prior to the next meeting. If not, moving on. Under new business number 4, finance, there's a general fund balance for your information and monthly financial reports for your information. Any questions for Christy on those? Okay. Number 5, personnel. A, approval of resignation at the conclusion of the 2023 to 2024 school year. Number 1, Annie Steyer. Is there a motion? Motion by Steve, second by Jamie. We have a motion, a second, for approval of resignation at the conclusion of the 2023 to 2024 school year. Annie Steyer. Any discussion? We thank Annie for her service to our district. If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. B, yes.
I just had a comment. I didn't want to do it in the course of that motion, but, these resignations now are basically releasing from a 2-year contract. Because the contract goes through next year, does it not?
So individual contracts are annual.
Okay.
So the negotiated agreement is for 2 years. Individual contracts are annual.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank
So
you.
she is not asking for release from contract, just stating that she's resigning and wouldn't be signing and
Renewing.
offered.
Okay.
If a continuing contract was offered, she would not be taking it, is essentially what she's saying.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Yep, and also always appreciate the more advanced notice that we get for these, so we appreciate her letting us know that as well in advance. So thank you, Annie, for that as well. Under 5, personnel B, approval to hire and begin February 20th, 2024. Number 1, Heidi Eckert, JV CTC Assistant Director, and if that's approved, under A, subsequently approval of the resignation from her position that she was holding, that was the Dean of Students position. Is there a motion? Motion by Aaron. Is there a second? Second by Dan. So we have a motion and a second for approval to hire to begin February 20th, 2024, Heidi Eckert, JV CTC Assistant Director, number 1, and A, approval of resignation from her Dean of Students position. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved, and welcome to your new role, Heidi. We're glad to have you. Under C, we have approval to hire for the 2024 to 2025 school year pending background check and receipt of licensure, Olivia Hoke, for music education. Is there a motion? Motion by Dan. Is there a second by Aaron? A motion, a second for approval to hire for the 2024 to 2025 school year pending background check and receipt of licensure, Olivia Hoke, music education. Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved, and welcome, Olivia. The superintendent evaluation timeline is there for your information, and we will bring that to the March meeting. Number 6, policy and procedures. A, the board self-assessment. That closes tomorrow, so please complete that if you haven't already. B, we're going to move into approval of policies. We have number 1, amended policy GACB, patriotic exercises. Does the board want to do all of these at once? Is that okay with the board? Okay. Number 2, amended policy GDAA, early graduation. And then A and B is review of amended exhibit GDAA-E1, application for early graduation. B, review of exhibit GDAA-E2, application for early graduation of the alternative education program. Number 3, amended policy GDB, graduation exercises. And number 4, amended policy FGBB, student prayer during non-instructional time. Is there a motion? Motion by Jamie, is there a second? Second by Dan. We have a motion, a second for approval of policies 1 and 2 with A and B, and 3 and 4. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 7, nothing under tuition. 8, other. A, election timeline. Christy, do you have that in front of you? Do you want to just read through that?
Yeah. So the election will be on June 11th, and we have 1 representative from the rural 1, Aaron Roberts, and 3 city seats, which would be city number 1, Jamie Bear, city number 2, Diane Hansen, and city number 4, Gail Nelson. The deadline for filing intent and statement of interest is April 8th, and that would need to be received in my office by 4 p.m. All of the packet with all of the required forms is on our website, or you can email or call central office and I can get a packet. And then all the deadlines are also on the website in the packet. So you can see we'll have on April 10th, we'll have a name placement drawing for the names on the ballot. And as I said, June 11th is the election. So if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me, or if you have any questions now.
Any questions? Thank you, Christy, for the reminder of that. Moving on in the agenda, items for future agenda. Does anyone have an item for future agenda? The one thing I had, Dr. Leck, is, it doesn't have to be next agenda, but maybe a discussion on our Dean of Students position and how, are we going to have one open in the fall, or how that is going to look. So that is something that I'd like to, go ahead.
If I may, that might be a good conversation for our finance committee coming up, because it would be a budgetary impact. One of the things that I know that you'll reference a finance committee meeting coming up next week. But I would like for us, Christy and I visited, we would like for finance to meet every month from now until the preliminary budget is presented to the board to take a real in-depth look at the budgetary process. And your topic would be one that would provide, there would be an expenditure increase for a program like that. So you would want to make sure that there is room in the budget to do that. And so maybe that's where that conversation starts, and then it could come as part of the budget approval process, whether we do that or not annually.
Okay.
So that would be my suggestion.
Sounds great. So, yes, Jamie, go ahead.
Yeah. As far as the Dean of Students, I think it would be interesting to have Mr. Meisner back to say, just to hear how he's transitioning into his role and how the position helped him, or, where we could improve possibly too, so.
Yeah. Good idea. And anything else for future agendas that somebody has? If you think of something, please let myself or Dr. Leck know. Under meetings to be scheduled, this meeting was scheduled today, so it's not on your agenda yet probably, but there is going to be a finance committee that has been mentioned at 5 p.m. Tuesday, February 27th in the conference room. There's also the health insurance committee meeting on Monday, March 11th at 3:45 in the district office conference room. And our next school board meeting is on Monday, March 4th, 2024 at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room at the middle school. Thank you to the board members that finished their superintendent evaluations, so we can move forward with that process. The monthly superintendent evaluation for today is Section 1, Goal and Vision Setting, and Section 6, Operations and Resource Management. There being no further business before the board, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.